of applause for your Miles Wide Riverkeeper, Ben Ford.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm your Miles Y Eastern Bay Riverkeeper, Ben Ford. This is my third State of the Rivers. The first one I co-presented with Annie, and I think I was like a week and a half into the job. So, hopefully I'm getting a little bit more polished. So I wanted to echo what Matt said about our volunteers and the people that help us in this work. We're at, I think, about 32 staff members right now, and I'm gonna walk around. I like moving, and I'm not sure how long this jacket's gonna last. But we have a lot of really committed, dedicated volunteers and supporters all around our 4 major watersheds here, doing all kinds of really great programming to improve our water quality. Planting trees, scouting for SAV, Marylanders Grow Oysters, helping with the education department, you name it. So I'm going to start off by presenting the Volunteer of the Year Award. So this is in honor of Andy Coombs, who passed away in 2016. And Andy was, by all accounts, a guy you could count on to do basically anything at any time. All around, super volunteer, and in his honor, we give out this Volunteer of the Year Award every year. And this year, it's going to a person who I think really exemplifies, what Andy stood for within our organization. This person volunteers for the education department. This person is an SAV watcher. This person is a swim tester or Swim Shore Rivers program. So he goes and collects water samples from Memorial Day to Labor Day, brings them to the office, and we crunch that and push it out to the public and figure out, if it's safe to swim. So with no further ado, Donna McCann is the Volunteer of the Year. Don, are you here? He said he was coming. That's okay. Well, we have something for him. How far does it go? Oh, this is very important. See? So he's at a meeting right now about sea level rise in St. Michael's. So, go figure. Oh. I'm going to call up Paige from our education department, who has additional awards to present.
Cool. Are you okay hitting the clicker? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can do it.
Cool. I'll just give you a really clear
wink.
signal when it's time. Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Paige Dempsey. I'm the education program manager at Shore Rivers, and Ben is graciously letting me take a little bit of time tonight to talk about some of the very important community members that we on the education team love working with. The students here on the Eastern Shore who care about and are engaged with the work we do to restore and advocate for our waterways. Last March, we held our 4th annual Upper Shore Youth Environmental Action Summit, where over 100 of our students from our watershed gathered to learn about action they can take today to protect our waterways, as well as paths they can pursue to continue this work into their future. Tonight, I have the privilege of recognizing 2 outstanding students who've contributed greatly to the summit throughout their high school careers. Finn Merrick and Carissa Shue have been involved with the summit as student leaders for a number of years. Finn since the fall of 2021 and Carissa since the fall of 2022. This means that when I started at Shore Rivers and began working on the summit in 2023, both of them had more experience with and institutional knowledge of the event than I did. In their time as student leaders, they have seen the summit through several iterations as it changed location, format, and focus. Their contributions to the event are nearly impossible to convey in its entirety, but in this time, Carissa and Finn have led community building workshops, spoken in front of over 100 of their peers and teachers, and offered their honest opinions and brilliant ideas while planning the event. And as returning student leaders, they set a wonderful example for other students in that leadership group. Carissa brought creativity, consistency, and collaboration to every one of our meetings. Going into our student leader retreat, we knew Carissa could be relied on to be welcoming and supportive of other students there, and she did just that. I learned something new every time I talk with her, as Carissa has a scientist's curiosity. Finn is committed to this work and committed to inspiring others to learn about and deepen their relationship to the environment. He is thoughtful and is the first person to ask, "How can I help?" Finn has challenged himself in the tasks he has taken on at the summit, and they reliably produce creative and thoughtful results despite occasionally taking him out of his comfort zone. Finn and Carissa's commitment to our waterways extend beyond their work with Shore Rivers. For instance, Carissa is involved with Scouts, and Finn is a part of CBF's youth leadership program as well. Carissa and Finn, it has been an absolute joy to work with you over the last 2 years. Thank you for your tremendous contributions to Shore Rivers and the summit. We will miss you, and we wish you all the best in your post-high school plans. We have a gift for you to say thank you for all that you've done for Shore Rivers. They are some ceramics donated by the potter Wanda Brumwell. So if you could, please come on up here to accept this gift and be recognized for the outstanding student stewards that you are.
Great job, folks. Thank you, Paige. So as Matt said, the mission of Shore Rivers is to protect Maryland's Eastern Shore waterways through science-based advocacy, restoration, education, and engagement. And I want to introduce our Riverkeeper team. Most of you know they're all here tonight, including me. Zach Kelleher, our science guy, he knows algae in and out. He can ID that, just from a cell phone photo, right, Zach? Sure. Here we are in Annapolis. Up next, we've got me. I do this a lot. I realize I have so many photos of myself giving a thumbs up on the boat for some reason. We're scouting SAV. And then there's my first solo State of the Rivers. I'm wearing the same shirt. Annie Richards. Annie is our legislative lead. She really takes point on a lot of our advocacy efforts in Annapolis. A good friend and a mentor in this role. We've got Matt Pluta up next, the director of the Riverkeepers program and our longest serving Riverkeeper. I'm privileged enough to share an office with him a certain days of the week, and I just keep learning and learning. And that's our team. Soon we'll have a watershed scientist hired, and that'll kind of round out this Riverkeeper department. And we're really excited about that. I want to shout out the staff. I'm not going to go through all the names and everything that we do because we'll be here all night, but a lot of them are here, and I want to point out that these events, if this was the only one you went to maybe the Chop Tank or the Chester or the SAS, these events are a big lift, and there's no way that we could do this without this team behind us. Look at all these chairs, the projector, although thanks to Queen Anne's County TV over there, you guys rock. This microphone's really nice, and so is your projector. But the food, the beer, Scott Budden back there shucking oysters like a maniac. It takes a village, and that village is this awesome group of people that I'm privileged to work with. I thought I had that timed out perfectly. There's Megan and I jumping some oysters overboard. And there's Scott, when he's not shucking oysters, he's keeping our books in order. And our ED, Isabel, obviously can't be here today, but she's a good friend, former Riverkeeper, and We'd be lost without her. Our vision, thriving rivers cherished by all Eastern Shore communities. So I was reading this the other day thinking about what about these rivers we cherish on an individual level. So like, why are you here today, besides you wanted to see the coolest riverkeeper of all of us speak? But what's your why? I know what mine is. It's family. My wife Kate and I met about 150 yards from here, right at the base of Waterman's Wharf. I was standing in the water at the time, which I feel like kind of set us on a course of enjoying the Chesapeake together. Here we are in Smith Island on a king tide, on the road to from Ewell to, anyway. Rhodes Point, yeah, there's no road to Tylerton. Here's my other why. Laurie, I want Laurie to grow up in a place where he is not concerned overly about, can he swim here? Can he eat these crabs? Can he eat these oysters? Can he fish? I want him to be able to learn how to drive a boat better than this. I mean, I think he's killing it. But this is my why, and I want to challenge all of you this evening to think about what's yours. So, thriving. We talked about cherished, thriving rivers. What does that mean? For thriving rivers, I believe we need good water quality, high habitat value, and that'll equal thriving rivers. So here are some of the issues and impacts that we're seeing from excess nutrients. We're seeing a lot of this right now. This is from last year, but we're seeing a lot of algal growth right now. Sediment plumes. We'll get into grades in a little bit, but we have bacteria issues. We have our newest swim tester site in Kent Narrows. It passes frequently, but when it fails an order of magnitude above the passing level for bacteria. We're challenged by sea level rise, where Don is right now, hopefully solving this. We've got increasing precipitation and storm events that we are increasingly challenged by, and aging infrastructure to handle that stormwater. Here are some of the sources of these pollution that we run into in our waterways. So that's a pile of chicken litter. You'll see thousands of them around the shore. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but these end up in our waterways. We get runoff from urban or suburban sources, especially around St. Michael's, Easton, and Kent Island. And this is kind of what we're challenged by. Wastewater treatment plants, a point source pollution source. So you could point to, where it's coming out, aging infrastructure, sewer leaks, sewer discharge in rain events, and population growth. And I know we hear a lot about Kent Island and the kind of explosion of growth there over the last couple decades. But I grew up in Easton, and I can tell you Talbot County has changed quite a bit as well. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but this is a problem or a challenge that we are faced with. These folks are putting in septic systems. They're putting in, we'll talk about hardened shorelines in a little bit, my pet peeve. But all of this is threatened by climate change and sea level rise. A little snapshot of the Miles Y and Eastern Bay. The watershed runs up kind of let's call it the backbone of Kent Island, as it were, Route 50 and around just a tiny bit of Easton, and then through the Bay 100. Predominantly agricultural, roughly 55% of the land use is agricultural, 27% is in forest, and the rest is in residential, urban, or wetland. So let's talk a little bit about water quality. I'm going to get into our numbers here, and I wanted to just call out this lovely photo of where we are right now. We are right there. So, in the Miles Y and Eastern Bay, so I also want to point out, I say Miles Y and Eastern Bay like 1,000 times a day. So in writing, and you'll see this, I often shorten it to MWEB. Thank you. So I'm describing the acronym. We have 20 tidal water quality monitoring sites. We sample each one 14 times, so that's twice a month, and sample for 7 different parameters. That's 1,960 data points, and that's just for this river. It's the same for Matt's and similar for both Zach and Annie's. We're handling this massive data set to generate this report card every year. So here's a little heat map of the watershed. Eastern Bay, Miles, and Y are labeled on here with a health base scale, similar to what you got in school. Probably, you guys look like an A to B thing. I was more a C student, but my mom's in the audience, so I need to be honest there. And here's where we are this year. It's a little bit of a mixed bag, actually. So Eastern Bay went down half a grade, Miles River went down half a grade, and Y River went up half a grade. And we'll get into a few of these parameters. So this is this year. I won't linger on here because it's busy, but this is this year's. This is all on your report card that you can look at on your chair, and that's last year's. So you can see kind of a trend here. Water clarity, I think, is one of the biggest challenges in the Miles Y and Eastern Bay, followed by chlorophyll and some nutrient pollution, especially in the Y. So here's the nitrogen score. You can see on the heat map, I'm going to go through these, but just as you're looking at this heat map, red is bad, green is good. Red for nitrogen, phosphorus, clarity, and chlorophyll are all correlated to the headwaters of our watersheds. So I want to call this out because often we hear about resistance to doing local water quality improvement projects or spending time and an effort or money locally to improve water quality when one pulse of rain can wipe out all the stuff, coming through Conowingo, or the Back River plant in Baltimore has a big overage. What's the point? What's the point of all this? The point is that the pollution in our system is not coming from the Susquehanna, at least in my watershed, in your watershed, is not coming from the Susquehanna or from Baltimore Harbor. It's coming from our agricultural land, our development, our fertilizer that we put on our lawns, our septic systems that aren't BAT systems or need upgrades or not being maintained or pumped out. So that's kind of where we are this year. Like I said, mixed bag. I want to talk a little bit about the Caesar report. This is a report that came out a couple years ago. Dozens of very high-level Bay scientists came together to work on this document. And it's 100 and gajillion pages, and you do not need to read it, but we have, and so you don't have to. We distilled this into a couple of meaningful takeaways for the Eastern Shore. One is that we need to shift our focus now that a lot of the hard work is done for point source pollution. So our wastewater treatment plants have been upgraded, mostly the big ones, to what's called ENR, or enhanced nutrient removal systems. So if you were to look at the wastewater treatment plants within this watershed, there's only one that regularly has overages, and that's the Preserve at Y Mills, which is going to be upgraded soon. The Kent Island and St. Michael's wastewater treatment plants are quite high performing in the whole scheme of things. We need to shift our focus to non-point source, so that 55% that's agricultural, that's also our septic systems, that's also our urban runoff. Incentives are great, but they often don't work to drive behavior change. We have a lot of people that work with us to put in BMPs, and that's awesome, but we find that those are often the same people coming back to us for these. We definitely need some form of mandate, and we need policy to drive that behavior change. And they also call out the need to shift our focus from dissolved oxygen in the deep water channel, and that's the barometer for bay health, into where people actually interact with the water most often, which is this shallow water, near shore habitat. And so we're kind of defining that nearshore, and so does the CESA report, nearshore habitat, as kind of riparian buffers. So think about critical area down through shorelines, wetlands, SAV beds to oyster reef, but not necessarily into the 40-foot deep water channels or up into the forests of the kind of inland, as it were, in Talbot County. I don't know if we actually have inland. But one of the other things that the CESA report calls out is that we need better, more effective, and more monitoring of these parameters that kind of illustrate the bay health. And when done correctly, that can really inform the models that we use to drive policy within the Chesapeake region. So the Chesapeake Bay model is incredibly important, but it's only good if it's got great data. And so we're collecting 65, 67 tidal water quality monitoring sites with all those parameters. The state is collecting, I think, about 7 or 12. So we're collecting a lot of information that can go to inform this model. But to talk a little bit more about it, I'm going to turn the mic over briefly to Ray Terracina from Smithsonian. And go ahead.
All right. So I am hijacking this presentation. It is no longer the state of the river. It is the state of the research, which is what you guys have been doing. So hello, like Ben said, my name is Ray Terracina. I am a program specialist at the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. But more specifically, I'm the project manager for one of our participatory science projects, or citizen science, called Chesapeake Water Watch. So Ben, if you wouldn't mind clicking. So the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, or SERC, is located on the other side of the pond, or bay. We are over in Edgewater, Maryland, and so most of the data that we tend to have access to or collect is really Western Shore. And we notice and we know that that's a big issue when we're trying to represent the entire bay. And we have communities like you that are extremely passionate about collecting that data, and we have river keepers who are already out there doing the hard work. So we were able to take the opportunity to work with Shore Rivers on 2 different projects, both of which I'll talk about today. But first, I'm going to talk about my baby, if you wouldn't mind clicking. So Ben was saying we need better ways to monitor the bay, and CERC agreed. So back in 2021, we started a project called Chesapeake Water Watch, where our goal was to utilize remote sensing satellites in space to monitor the Chesapeake Bay. This technology has been used for decades, but it's been used in the open ocean, which is very stable and doesn't change often. Everyone knows the bay changes day to day, particularly the rivers that feed into the bay. So in order for us to use that technology, we have to ground truth it. We have to make sure that when we use satellites to monitor the bay, the data that they collect is accurate. And so that's where this project comes in. And Ben and Annie both have been helping us collect data for this project. What we do is we collect the same data on the ground that our satellites are collecting, and then we make adjustments to the algorithms that our satellites are using in order to make sure that they're accurate. It's going to take a little bit of work. It takes a lot of data to make sure this is happening. But with our partnership with Shore Rivers, we've already collected over 230 samples. I think we're at 233. And we're so excited because Megan White and I have been working to expand this not only to our river keepers, but also to Shore River volunteers. So if anyone has attended the April 2nd training, this may be you in this photo. You look a little ridiculous when you train, and you look ridiculous in the field. But as part of our project, our goal is to develop new ways for volunteers to collect water quality data that's more accessible. This is a smartphone app where you can measure turbidity without even touching the water, right? And you don't have to drive a sample somewhere to get it tested. So this is something that if you're interested in, it's called Hydrocolor. If you're interested in, you can scan this QR code. Ben promised that we have QR codes at the end of the presentation. You can talk to Megan White, or there's also a hidden table somewhere with my card and stickers, and also gray cards to use this smartphone app. Shameless plug. So if you're interested, this is an option. But it's really important that we are getting engaged in this kind of data collection Because before last year, your map was empty. And on this side of the bay, this is what it looks like after just a year and a half of data collection, right? So it makes a big difference, and now your side of the bay is represented in data that is going to be used for the future of water monitoring in space, I guess. All right, Ben.
Thanks, Ray. I lost the jacket. This is really important, I think, for us because one, I get to have Tara and Ray come out on the boat and do some of these ground truth samples, and they always bring the best snacks. But it's also something that you can do as a volunteer if you're an MGO grower or you just spend a lot of time on your dock, because all you have to do is walk out to the end of your dock and do this sample, and it uploads to CERC, and you can support the science. All right, our other monitoring program, Swimmable Shore Rivers. This is our bacteria monitoring program. I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of the kind of the year in review and what this program does. In the Miles Y and Eastern Bay, we're testing for enterococci. So this is an indicator bacteria that lives in all warm-blooded animals' guts. So if this is present at certain concentrations in the water, it can indicate that the water might be unsafe to spend a lot of time in. We test to an EPA protocol. We've got 7 different sampling stations, and we sample them 15 times. This is all volunteer-driven. So every Thursday morning, these folks go out, and they're collecting these water samples. They bring them to our office. Our interns and river keepers and Conservation Corps members process that, incubate it for 24 hours, and then read out the results on Friday morning to push out. It goes in the Star Democrat, it goes on our social media, we push it out by email, and this gives the public a tool through which they can choose how they are going to interact with their local water. So the dots might be a little bit hard to see, but green, we did a stop sign here. So green, yellow, red. So a red dot would mean that it passes fewer than 60 or less than 60% of the time. I don't have any red dots in this watershed. Well, don't cheer yet. Okay, so here are all the different sites. You got Claiborne, Miles River Yacht Club, and Mattapique pass 80% of the time or more. That's great. But when they fail, Miles River Yacht Club fails pretty high, and Kent Narrows, our newest, passes 73% of the time, but when it fails, that's the average failing. And keep in mind the threshold is 104 colony-forming units. So just let that sink in. So stay tuned, follow your Riverkeeper Facebook page, email us, check the newspaper. The Shore Rivers social accounts will also be posting these probably midday on Friday from Memorial Day to Labor Day, just to give an additional tool. And here's the red line is anything above the red line is a fail. So you can see Kent Narrows is, I blame the Chester. It's got to be the tide coming from the Chester. Right, Annie? All right. So we talked about water quality and the parameters. To get to thriving rivers, we need to work on habitat. So here's what we want. We want you to be able to interact with this public resource in a variety of ways. We want to catch crabs. We want to eat oysters. We want to go sailing. We want to just enjoy the sunset from our dock, dangle our feet in the water. We want to boat. We want to enjoy. That's me. That's how fast a Riverkeeper boat goes. We want thriving underwater meadows, SAV, submerged aquatic vegetation. We want this everywhere. This is an incredible resource that slows coastal erosion, fixes carbon, and removes nitrogen and phosphorus from the water, adds to dissolved oxygen, and is a nursery for all kinds of critters that we like to see in our waterways. We want healthy three-dimensional oyster reefs. So that's a 5 or 6 year old restored reef. You can see that it's three-dimensional, growing vertically, covered in sea squirts. But all those nooks and crannies, those interstitial space, that is incredibly important for all the things that forage fish and then finfish and crabs need to, make it in our waterways. And those are the organisms that we interact with. We want to see, healthy macrofauna here, so dolphins and cow-nosed rays or doubleheads. Does anybody know what a group of rays is called? I have a fever, and I need more cowbell. It's a fever of rays. I had to look that up. I didn't know that. So I'm going to talk about this near-shore habitat, and we're going to talk about it through 5 major lenses or areas. So forest buffers or riparian buffers, that's wooded or shrubby uplands. So you can see there's trees on either side of the stream. This Y Island, fairly well treed there. That's Drum Point. It's going really slow. Come on, there. Looks so cool. These vegetated areas are incredibly important. They protect that shoreline from erosion. They mitigate a lot of the nutrients that are coming into our waterways. There's a positive correlation between SAV abundance and robust riparian forested buffers. And they're home for wildlife, the wildlife that we want in this watershed. Threats to forested buffers. So just about 70% of the buffer land is forested throughout the Bay watershed, but is continuously threatened by development, land use changes, and expansion. So when we're on river patrol, I often see, it's almost always a new homeowner, and they may not know, but they want to view, and they've cut trees down. You're not supposed to do that. And that damages this resource for all of us. So what can you do about this first of 5 things? You can help us tree the shore. We will come and plant a tree at your house, or 3 if you're my mom. You could become a tree steward. You could plant a tree buffer on your farm. And if you want to learn more about this, you can scan the QR code. There's more QRs at the end, so don't feel like you got to rush to get your phone out. Next up, wetlands. Wetlands are incredibly important. These are marshes, swamps, bogs, areas where water and land really interface. They're often intertidal, though not always. They slow the kind of the big nutrients that we talked about in the water quality, that total nitrogen and phosphorus and sediment, from getting into our waterways. They're also nurseries. They also fix carbon. They are incredibly important, and they're also beautiful. So this is Warehouse Creek. Anybody on the Ken Island? Anybody from Ken Island out here? Okay, good. A few of you made the trek around. Yeah, Warehouse Creek. This is you would never know that this is in the heart of Ken Island. This is a beautiful paddle. If you ever get there, there's a public landing right about there. I recommend everybody go when it's not frozen. It was frozen. Wetlands. What are the threats and trends for wetlands? There's Kate again, also biking through the water. We're still on Smith Island. Smith Island is mostly wetland at this point. But it's a beautiful place. It's threatened by sea level rise, erosion, climate change, and a lot of places in our watersheds are challenged by shoreline development. And this is especially true as Annie has been working on in the Chester. There's some, let's just call it shenanigans in the critical area there in wetlands. So if you went to her State of the Rivers, and it's recorded, so you could go back and watch it. What are we doing about it? We are putting in restoration practices. Everything that's an orange dot, that might be hard to see from way back, but these are orange. Those are agricultural projects that Shore Rivers has spearheaded, and then the yellow is non-agricultural. Altogether, this is per year, these projects reduce 30,000 pounds of nitrogen, 6,000 pounds of phosphorus, and 8,000 tons of sediment. And that's a testament to our ag and restoration team and the work they do. What else have we worked on? So not this year, but the previous year in Annapolis, we worked on the Clean Water Justice Act. This was an advocacy collaboration between Potomac Riverkeeper Network, Chesapeake Legal Alliance, Shore Rivers, Waterkeepers Chesapeake, and Potomac Conservancy. And so the U.S. Supreme Court had stripped Clean Water Act protections from a lot of wetlands and streams that had been protected. And Maryland put that back in protection. So now a citizen can sue to protect their waterways, which that had been removed, and now it's back in. There's a lot of good advocacy from people like you and from organizations like Shore Rivers. What can you do? You can become an advocacy volunteer. We ask that our advocacy volunteers, when we have a call to action, you can write letters, you can contact your representatives, you can visit us, visit Annapolis with us. But writing a letter or testifying can be really impactful in Annapolis. You can restore a wetland on your farm. The QRs at the end will have a link to how you can do all of these things. So just sit back and relax for now. Shorelines. Now I got a lot to say about shorelines, more than I have for the other ones. So shoreline is a very small, it's probably the smallest of these zones, right? This is that small intertidal zone. Everybody's heard living shoreline. What does that mean? What is a living shoreline? What is a non-living shoreline? What's a hardened shoreline? So this is in Crab Alley, and you can see that this is a big riprap wall and another big riprap wall, and in between there's nothing. And here it is from another angle, right here. Every time there's a big storm or a big ice flow, that gets a little bit more narrow. You can see behind it this marina infrastructure. And all that sediment, when it breaches, will go just into the water column. We need to protect these shorelines. In 2016, 18% roughly of the bay shoreline was hardened. This is a big problem, and we're going to get into this. I think a lot of people want to protect their property. You've invested in this beautiful waterfront home. You want to make sure it doesn't wash away. A living shoreline is usually the best way to do that. This is an example of a hardened shoreline. And this is a map that shows percentage of shoreline within this watershed that is hardened. Red is bad, again. Red is always bad. You can see around St. Michael's, where we are now, it's approaching 100%. Bennett Point, sorry, Courtney, pretty hardened. Parts of Cox Creek and Crab Alley. And this matters. You probably can't read this, and I'm not going to spend long here, but we had an intern crunch these numbers. Percent of hardened shoreline in the miles is 31.4%, 17.6 in the Y, 30 even in the Eastern Bay tributaries added together. And when shoreline hardening above thresholds 10 to 30%, you start having serious negative effects on forage fish, SAV, and things that we like, crabs, rockfish, oysters. For every 1% increase in hardened shoreline, there is a 0.4% decrease in crab abundance. And as you can tell, I like crabs. I've got one hanging from my hat, and there I am, probably not catching one. I'm actually probably missing. This was a big study, VIMS, CERC, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So what can you do? Again, you could become an advocacy volunteer. We're working on these we're working in Annapolis and through our counties to really make it so that a homeowner can do this on their own, incentivized, and have it, not break the bank. You can consult with us on shoreline restoration projects. We have a shoreline designer in-house, an engineer who can do this sometimes when he's not working 90 hours a week. But the takeaway, shorelines, the softer you can make it, the better it is for your local waterways. SAV, submerged aquatic vegetation, one of my favorites, yeah! We love SAV. We've got a bunch of SAV watchers. Hey, put your hand up if you're an SAV watcher. Yeah, cool. So our SAV watcher program, we send them out scouting and mapping and identifying species and seed readiness for our SAV beds within our watersheds, so that we can work to restore some SAV. So we have a program where we will collect with volunteers often seed from healthy SAV beds. Oh, I'm in threats. I'm not at threats yet. And we will turbulate those seeds, so simulate a year of drift and wave action, and the following spring place them back out so that they can grow into healthy meadows. We've got the second ever turbulator in the world. Now there, I think, are more of them. But if you ever want to volunteer either scouting for SAV or turbulating, which is very fun and dirty and wet, but it's a great time, let us know. So threats. So we have a goal of 185,000 acres of underwater grasses. We are not even close. We're at 82, 83. We'll round up to 83,000 acres. So we're not even halfway there. That rises and falls with a number of different, inputs. So they're threatened by climate change, clarity, SAV, because they're a vascular plant. They need sunlight to grow. So when we drop a Secchi disc and we get a foot or 2 feet on our Secchi disc, that means that that light is only penetrating 4 feet into the water, because the light's got to go down, bounce off, and get into my weird eyeball. And so we need better clarity. Ironically, when you have SAV and oysters growing in the same area, you tend to see better clarity. Threats, invasive species, mute swans, cover from invasive plants, irresponsible boaters. These are prop tracks through an SAV bed. We didn't do that. That's our boat, but we didn't do it. Promise. We drifted in responsibly. You can see us standing there. And hydraulic clamming. So hydraulic escalator dredge is how a lot of watermen catch soft shell and razor clams for crab bait. It's the cheapest bait. It keeps the cost of our crabs down, but it's catastrophic for SAV. We have SAV protection zones, but not all SAV beds are in SAV protection zones necessarily. So SAV in the Miles Y and Eastern Bay. So here we are harvesting. We go out and tear the tops off. That has seed-rich material. We turbulate it. You could be doing this. It's great. We got a new turbulator base, super comfy to stand on, I hope. And this is not in the Miles Y or Eastern Bay. This is in the chop tank. I stole it from Matt, but I don't have any of us planting because I'm not flying the drone like Matt. I'm actually doing work. He's not looking. What can you do? You can help us by becoming a volunteer SAV watcher. We'll send you out by boat or kayak, and we'll give you some areas to scout. If you have a drone and a drone license, you can do that with your drone. You can become an advocacy volunteer and work with us on some of these issues in Annapolis or locally. Last one, maybe my favorite, oysters. Oysters, a keystone species. Everyone loves them. Everyone knows them. We're eating them tonight. Thanks, Scott. Round of applause for Orchard Point Oyster Company and Scott Budden. So we talked a little bit about that interstitial space, that the nooks and crannies of an oyster reef. This is where you get all kinds of cool polychaete worms and tunicates and mud. Oh, here I got some actually. So polychaete worm, skillet fish, goby, something, grass shrimp, all kinds of stuff. This is what perch, rockfish, crabs, this is what they eat. And we won't be able to catch them if there's nothing there for them to eat. So we run an MGO program. We are doing a number of different things in terms of oysters. Has anybody ever wondered what a mature reef ball looks like on sonar? Isn't that cool? So that's in Prospect Bay. That's a pretty old placement of reef balls, and they're absolutely covered in oysters now. They look like little practice golf balls underwater. Threats. So pollution, disease, climate change, and decades of harvest, historic overharvest. It's a pretty well-managed fishery right now, but it hasn't always been that way. There was a bit of a gold rush, oyster rush. And we have depleted our oyster population, and we're rebounding. And oyster restoration is working in sanctuaries. And Jeff Harrison from Talbot Watermen's Association is here tonight. Thanks for coming, Jeff. Talbot Watermen's Association is putting a lot of their own money back into oyster repletion on the public bottom. It's a great program, and it seems to work. In Broad Creek especially, it looks amazing. We need more oysters, and we need it from every direction and all sides, and you can get involved. Threats. Oysters need at least 2 to 3 milligrams of dissolved oxygen. So this is a little graph of kind of what thrives at what level. I had to throw the oyster in there because there wasn't one on this chart that I stole from the internet somehow. So there are places where midsummer, when we're doing our DO testing, it can fall below 3 or 2, especially in deep channel. That can be problematic for the oysters and also the things that live on that oyster reef. So, where is he? Oh, look, check this guy out. See the crab? So you might be asking how I got this footage. This is an oyster reef on the Y. And we'll get there, actually. I thought it was this slide. Sorry, Ray, stay seated. All right. So there's a plan in the works. So they're a couple years in, but the state has allocated $2 million a year for 25 years, split between repletion programs in the public fishery and the restoration for sanctuaries within the Miles Y and Eastern Bay complex. So there's 7 oyster sanctuaries in this watershed. About halfway up the Miles, it begins. The mouth of the Y, there are 3 contiguous in Prospect Bay, Cox Creek, and this big weird polygon off Tillman Point in Claiborne. This is hard to read, but this is what I got from Maryland DNR, so this is all we get. But everything in yellow are sites to be planted in that time frame. So that's $1 million of oysters a year going into these sanctuaries, and another $1 million going into the public bottom. So this is a good thing for our watershed. Yeah. Clap for that. So what can you do? You can join the Marylanders Grow Oysters program. You can, again, become an advocacy volunteer. We work on a lot of oyster legislation and trying to make it easier to restore our oyster populations in our waterway. But you can eat oysters. You can save the shell. Never throw the shell away. You can grow them on your dock with the MGO program. So I want to turn it over to Ray again. We have another partnership program where you can get involved.
All right, thank you. So you heard that number Ben said, right? $2 million just in the next year, right? Going into restoration, if you want to go ahead in. That's a lot of money for oyster restoration, and when governments and research facilities spend that much money to restore ecosystems, they want to know if that's working. Historically, in order to check if an oyster restoration site is taking and growing and maturing, What you would have to do is you have to hire a team of divers. You send them out there. They spend a few hours getting their equipment on. Then they go for a dive. They go around. They try and see in the murky marsh water. It's a whole mess, and it's a whole day affair just to check out 1 or 2 sites. That adds to the cost, right? So here at CERC, we've been looking at ways to make this more accessible, more streamlined. And through the project called OysterCam, we've been trying to do that. So here are some volunteers dropping what we call our OysterCam rig. So now instead of having to hire an entire team of divers to go and check out murky water, what we can do is strap a GoPro onto some PVC pipe that's weighted down and drop it into the water for a few minutes. We let it sit there, and it returns. I wish I'd thought about it. You have so many videos? I didn't have any videos. It returns a video, hopefully, of where we dropped the rig, right? And in that video, we can see if there's critters growing and flowing around there. We can see if any oysters are growing. Sometimes it is just a sandy bottom, and unfortunately that means the restoration site is no longer functional. But sometimes, you start to see the later stages of a reef. This saves a lot of money, a lot of time, and we're hoping to engage more community members later down the line by adding a component where volunteers can go online and watch these videos and mark different critters that they see and say, oh, look, I can see this foresting fish, or I can see blue crabs here. And that way, more people can set eyes on these videos and see what we actually have growing in these oyster reefs. That is in its early stages. Right now, we're beta testing with high schoolers. So if that's something you're interested in, hang tight. It might take us a while to get there. But so far with Shore Rivers, we have been able to test 5 different rivers with the OysterCam rigs. The Chester, Choptank, Corsica? Did I say that right? Corsica? All right. I'm a newbie into the area. The Eastern Bay and the Tread Avon. So if we have any, I think we have 11 Shore Rivers volunteers. If we have any oyster rig volunteers, thank you so much. Oh yeah. Thank you so much. You guys are laying the foundation of easier, more accessible monitoring of these restoration sites. If you're interested in getting involved, there's a QR code, I'm sure, at the end. Thank you.
I've talked about this QR code a lot. I wonder, what if it weren't there? All right, so we're getting to the end here, and I'm gonna go get a beer. I hope you all can join me at the bar and maybe have some oysters. But I want a couple takeaways. Our rivers are an amazing resource, and they are yours. Pollution impacts our ability to fully utilize these resources. The majority of the pollution is coming from our own land. Restoration works, and it takes a community to protect these rivers. This community, our community. People out there on the water having a good time and coming to events like this. So I challenge everybody that came today. I talked a little bit about my why. You may already have your why, but I challenge you to find out what that is and get involved however you can. And this is one way. QR code. And the QR is still there at the bottom. You can sign up for our newsletters. You can sign up to do any of the programs we've discussed today. My email's there. Never hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to take any questions at the bar.
To give thanks to all those who did put work into this, I want to invite up the Shore River staff to come on up here with me if you can. Come on up, all the way up, everyone. Come on up. These folks right here that are joining me on stage, come on up. Yeah. Coming through, yeah. So this is your team. This is the team that's working every day for your right for clean rivers here on the Eastern Shore. We have our education department. Yes. We have our community engagement department here. We have our agriculture and restoration team. We have our finance, operations, communications. And we've got your voice for the river, your riverkeeper team here as well. And so recognize who these folks are, their smiling faces. Thank them for their tireless work in cleaning up these rivers and engaging our communities. And we're really excited to have you all here tonight joining us for this last 4th of 4 State of the Rivers event. So thank you.